Philadelphia 76ers, 47 and 35, seventh seed in the East, won their play-in game to get into the playoffs, where they lost to the Knicks in the first round in 6 games. I think the big story of the Sixers season, if I had to sort of put it into basic terms, is very up and down. Started down with Harden asking out, requesting a trade. They finally trade him a few games into the season. They get a pretty good return for him, if you ask me, in terms of like players picked, etc. And I actually think it helped them in the long run because Harden's a bit overrated, especially as he's gotten older. And meanwhile, it allowed Tyrese Maxey to become the sort of blossoming player who became an all-star, became the most improved player. And I'm not saying he's ever going to be a superstar, but he can be a really good player, and he is really young. And according to, appropriately, the Sixers rewarded him. They gave him 5 years, 204 million in the offseason for his troubles. And yeah, like he became the co-star that Joel Embiid needed. Speaking of Embiid, started off the year extremely strong, averaged a point a minute, which is unheard of. That's Wilt Chamberlain era stuff. But then he got injured, and when he came back, he never really was fully healthy. So, the Sixers, I think they should have been favored against the Knicks, but they lost to the Knicks in 6. The Knicks outplayed them, even though Embiid was dominant. At times. So he had 50-point game, and he averaged ridiculous numbers. And actually, the Knicks were outscored by the Embiid and the Sixers 9.3 points per 100 when Embiid was on the floor. When he was off the floor, the Sixers got outscored by a total of 47 points. And this is in a 45-minute stretch. Now, in the case of Embiid, I should also mention that he was dominant at times, but he also has a tendency to get injured, not stay healthy for full seasons and full playoff runs, and he can sometimes get a little small in big time situations. So that's another issue. But that's the sort of up and down of the Sixers seasons: his injury, the trades, and whatever have you. Fast forward to this season, Embiid, he actually got I have my numbers here. 3-year, $193 million extension. And with the cap space that the Sixers had just saved and amassed through the Harden trade and not signing Maxey for a cap hold, they were also able to pick up Paul George for 4 years and 212 million, which is a lot. Between 3 players, that is a lot of money. And given that Embiid is 30 and never stays healthy, and Paul George is 34 and never stays healthy, that's kind of alarming for your sort of core big three. Like on paper, the big three sounds great. If they're healthy, they're a title favorite, title contender. Maybe not title favorite, but they're a title contender. And the pieces fit together really well. Embiid as the center, George as the forward, Maxey as the guard. But two of those three are again getting older, get injured a lot, and that sort of raises questions about the Sixers' true ceiling. Um, Around those pieces, there is a lot to like. They were able to sign some pretty good pieces in the offseason. They were able to keep Kelly Oubre. They kept Kyle Lowry. They signed Reggie Jackson. They signed Eric Gordon. They were somehow able to get Caleb Martin from the Heat. That, not in a trade, but in free agency. That to me is like insane, like as a steal, as a pickup. And there is a pretty good amount of depth. They did lose Paul Reed in the offseason, replaced by Andre Drummond. Now, I think Drummond's a better player, but Drummond has a certain ceiling, and he can get a little low IQ in the playoffs, so that's something to monitor. But there's a lot of depth. I will say I am concerned about a few things when it comes to the Sixers sort of rotation. Number one, they only have 2 centers. That's not going to take you that far if you don't get like that third, like backup center. Number two, all of their guards are small and not good defensively. And I should mention for the backup guards between Lowry, Gordon, and Reggie Jackson, I wrote it here. I wrote it somewhere. Yeah, so Kyle Lowry's really old. I forget his age, excuse me. Reggie Jackson's really old. Eric Gordon's getting older. None of them are big. None of them are great defensively. I guess Gordon's okay. But then you have Tyrese Maxey as your point guard, also not great defensively. He needs to get better on that side of the ball, but that's a lot from your point guard slot. Then there's the issue of the forward position, the power forward. They don't really have like a big power forward. They did sign Gershon Yabusele in the offseason. He played well for France in the Olympics, but he only lasted 2 years in the NBA before. Is he going to be able to really meaningfully contribute in the NBA this time around? If he does, then that's your sort of big power forward. If not, the Sixers are sort of projected to start Caleb Martin at the 4, and that's kind of problematic because, yeah, he's a good player. But if Caleb Martin were to start at the 4, he would be the shortest player starting at power forward in the entire league. And you look at the rest of the sort of 4s on the lineup. Oubre is a little skinnier. Paul George is not really a 4. He's more of a 3. Like there's that sort of size concern up and down the roster, and that's going to have to be addressed at some point. The Sixers haven't been the best rebounding team, even when Drummond was there as a great rebounder, even with Embiid a great rebounder. There's always that size issue, and that can hurt them in the playoffs. On top of the injury questions, and on top of the sort of age of the roster. Now, do I think they could? Again, I absolutely think they could get to the finals and could even win the title. It will be hard. The East is a little bit better at the top with the Knicks, the Celtics, the Sixers, the Cavs, the Bucks, and then there's sort of the other teams that can kind of fit in that mold. But I certainly see a world where the Sixers can, if everything falls together and Embiid stays healthy. Now he has lost weight. He says he lost 25, 30 pounds. I don't know if that's really true, but he says he lost weight. And if he stays healthy because of the weight and the conditioning, that'd be great. One thing I am concerned about, though, he did have a longer off season because he played at the Olympics. He didn't play great in the Olympics. He only played well in like a couple games, but long sort of off season tends to carry over into the regular season. So that is something to monitor with him. But if he stays healthy, if George stays healthy, they play a lot of games or play enough, get to the playoffs healthy, then anything is possible. And the Sixers would certainly be a very scary team for any opponent.